The galaxy was burning. Stars flickered like dying candles, their light dimmed by the shadows of warships that loomed across the void. The Zentari Empire, a relentless swarm of insectoid warriors, had pushed its enemies to the edge of extinction. Their armies stretched across star systems, consuming everything in their path. Planets were stripped bare of resources, civilizations reduced to rubble, and hope seemed like a forgotten relic of the past. Above a dying red giant star, two fleets clashed in a fiery ballet of destruction. On one side stood the Lumina Federation, a coalition of peaceful species united by their love for art, science, and harmony. They fought valiantly, their sleek ships glowing with energy shields as they tried to hold back the endless tide of Zentari vessels. But it wasn't enough. The Zentari's numbers were overwhelming, their tactics brutal and efficient. Every explosion lit up the battlefield like a funeral pyre, marking another loss for the Luminous. Commander Vela, leader of the Lumina fleet, gripped the railing of her flagship's bridge. Her slender hands trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. For months, she had led her people in this desperate struggle, watching friends and allies fall one by one. Now, surrounded on all sides, her options were running out. She glanced at the holographic display hovering above the command table. It showed her fleet dwindling, while the enemy forces grew stronger with every passing moment. "This can't be how it ends," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the hum of alarms and explosions outside. There has to be another way. Her second-in-command, Jarek, approached her cautiously. His armor bore scorch marks from earlier battles, and his usually calm demeanor was frayed at the edges. "We've done everything we can, Commander," he said grimly. "If reinforcements don't arrive soon, we won't last much longer." Vela clenched her jaw. Reinforcements. There were none left to call. The other factions in the galaxy had either been conquered or retreated into hiding. Even the mighty Drakthor Syndicate, known for its ruthless mercenaries, had refused to intervene. As far as anyone knew, the Zentari Empire was unstoppable. But then something stirred in the back of her mind. A story passed down through generations, dismissed by most as myth. Legends spoke of a species called humans, beings who once ruled vast portions of the galaxy before vanishing mysteriously centuries ago. Tales described them as fierce fighters, masters of strategy and innovation. Some even claimed they had toppled empires single-handedly during their prime. Could such stories be true? And if so, could they still exist? Vela hesitated only for a moment before making her decision. Turning to her communications officer, she ordered, "Send out a distress signal to Earth. Use the old coordinates encoded in our archives." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Earth. That barren rock at the edge of uncharted space. Many doubted anyone lived there anymore, let alone a race capable of turning the tide of war. But Vela didn't care. At this point, any chance, no matter how slim, was worth taking. As the signal shot out into the depths of space, Vela allowed herself a small spark of hope. If the humans were real, and if they answered, perhaps the battle wasn't lost after all. On Earth, life moved at a slower pace. The blue-green planet was a sanctuary of peace, untouched by the chaos that consumed the rest of the galaxy. Towering forests stretched across continents, their canopies alive with birdsong and rustling leaves. Cities floated on calm seas or nestled in valleys, powered by clean energy and designed to blend seamlessly with nature. Humans had long since abandoned their old ways of war and conquest, choosing instead to focus on art, philosophy, and exploration. But beneath this serene surface lay echoes of a forgotten past. Deep within secure vaults buried under mountains and oceans, ancient systems hummed quietly, waiting for a signal they hadn't received in centuries. These relics were remnants of humanity's golden age, a time when humans were feared and respected across the stars. Now those days seemed like distant myths, told only in stories shared around campfires or whispered in history classes. When Commander Vela's distress signal reached Earth, it triggered something no one expected. Hidden antennas picked up the transmission, awakening dormant protocols embedded in Earth's defense networks. Alarms blared in underground command centers, startling technicians who hadn't heard such alerts in generations. Word spread quickly, reaching the ears of the Council of Elders, the governing body responsible for maintaining humanity's isolationist policies. The council convened in an emergency session. Elders gathered in a domed chamber illuminated by soft, golden light. Holographic displays flickered above the round table, showing the coordinates sent by the Lumina Federation and images of the ongoing battle against the Zentari Empire. For hours, they debated whether to respond. Some argued that intervening would drag humanity back into the violence they had worked so hard to escape. Others believed ignoring the call would make them complicit in the suffering of innocent lives. Amidst the heated discussion, Cal Draven stormed into the room uninvited. A tall man with sharp features and piercing gray eyes, Cal was known for his fiery temper and unmatched piloting skills. He wore a patched-up flight suit, evidence of countless reckless stunts during training exercises. His reputation made him both admired and dismissed by many, but not today. "We can't just sit here and do nothing," Cal shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "This is our chance to remind the galaxy what we're capable of." The elders glared at him, but Cal didn't back down. "You think staying hidden keeps us safe? Look where that's gotten us. Forgotten, irrelevant. If we don't act now, we'll lose the opportunity to protect not just ourselves, but others too." His words struck a chord. After a tense silence, the council agreed to send a small team. Not an army, but enough to show goodwill and test the waters. They chose Cal to lead, despite his impulsiveness, because they knew he wouldn't give up until the mission succeeded, or failed spectacularly. Cal wasted no time assembling his crew. First came Mira Solis, a brilliant engineer with a knack for turning scraps into miracles. Her quiet confidence masked a fierce determination to prove herself. Next was Arlen Vox, a strategist whose stoic demeanor hid deep scars from battles fought long ago. Finally, there was Zix-7, a sentient AI companion programmed with fragments of human warfare knowledge. Though lacking emotions, Zix-7's analytical mind made it invaluable. As the team boarded the Eclipse, a prototype vessel sleek and deadly, Cal couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and dread. This wasn't just another adventure, it was a leap into the unknown. Somewhere out there, a galaxy teetered on the brink of collapse. And now, humanity's forgotten warriors were stepping back onto the stage. "Ready or not," Cal muttered as the ship lifted off. "The galaxy's about to remember us." The Eclipse cut through the endless expanse of space like a blade slicing through darkness. Its sleek, black hull shimmered faintly under the light of distant stars. Inside, the hum of its engines filled the air, a constant reminder of the long journey ahead. For Cal and his crew, this mission was more than just a trip. It was a test of humanity's ability to rise when called upon. Cal sat in the pilot's chair, his fingers dancing over the controls as he guided the ship through hyperspace. The swirling colors outside the cockpit window were mesmerizing, but Cal barely noticed. His mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. Would they be welcomed as heroes, or dismissed as relics of a bygone era? He clenched the controls tighter, determined not to let doubt creep in. Behind him, Mira worked tirelessly at her station, running diagnostics on the ship's experimental systems. She tapped furiously on her console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "These hyperdrive stabilizers are pushing their limits," she said without looking up. "If we hit any anomalies, we're going to have to improvise." "Improvisation is kind of our thing, isn't it?" Cal replied with a smirk, glancing back at her. But Mira didn't smile. She knew how dangerous this journey could be. Hyperspace wasn't just empty void. It was unpredictable, filled with cosmic storms, gravity wells, and other hazards that could tear a ship apart. Arlen stood silently near the rear of the cockpit, his arms crossed as he stared out into the swirling chaos beyond the windows. He rarely spoke unless necessary, preferring to observe and analyze. His sharp eyes caught every detail, from the way Cal handled the controls to the subtle vibrations of the ship's frame. He trusted no one completely, not even himself, but he had faith in the mission. Failure wasn't an option. Zix-7 floated nearby, its glowing blue core pulsating softly as it processed data streams. Unlike the others, Zix-7 felt no fear or excitement, only logic. Probability of encountering hostiles within this route, 23.7%. It announced in its calm, mechanical voice. Recommend increasing defensive readiness. Hostiles. Cal raised an eyebrow. You mean pirates? Or worse, Arlen added grimly. Not everyone in the galaxy will be happy to see humans again. As if on cue, the ship shuddered violently, throwing everyone off balance. Alarms blared as red warning lights flashed across the cockpit. Mira cursed under her breath as she scrambled to stabilize the hyperdrive. We've hit a gravitational anomaly, she shouted. Hold on. The Eclipse lurched sideways, spinning out of control as the swirling colors outside turned into a chaotic blur. Cale gripped the controls tightly, fighting to regain command of the ship. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he wrestled with the unresponsive machinery. Come on, baby, don't fail me now. Just when it seemed like they might be torn apart, the ship stabilized with a jolt. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, except Arlen, who immediately began scanning for threats. We're not alone, he said, his voice low and urgent. I'm picking up multiple signatures closing in fast. Cal's heart sank as he checked the sensors. Sure enough, 3 ships emerged from the shadows of the anomaly. Pirates, judging by their jagged designs and patched-up hulls. They circled the Eclipse like vultures, weapons charging. They must have been waiting for someone weaker to pass through. Mira muttered, already working on countermeasures. What do we do? Cale grinned despite the danger. What we do best, outsmart them. With lightning-fast reflexes, he activated the ship's cloaking device, making the Eclipse disappear from view. The pirate ships hesitated, confused by the sudden loss of their target. Now, Cale barked. Mira unleashed a burst of electromagnetic interference, disabling the pirates' engines. One by one, their ships drifted helplessly into the void. That was too close, Arlen said, finally relaxing slightly. We can't afford mistakes like that. Cale nodded, his grin fading. Lesson learned. Next time, we'll be ready. As the Eclipse resumed its course, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that this skirmish was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast and unforgiving, and humanity's return wouldn't go unnoticed for long. The Eclipse emerged from hyperspace near the edge of the battlefield, its sleek form glinting faintly against the backdrop of a war-torn star system. Debris from destroyed ships floated silently in the void, and the distant flashes of explosions painted the darkness with bursts of fiery light. Cale leaned forward in his seat, his sharp eyes scanning the chaos unfolding before them. It was worse than he'd imagined. Lumina vessels were outnumbered 10-1, their defenses crumbling under relentless Centauri assaults. This is bad, Mira murmured, her fingers flying over her console as she analyzed the situation. Their fleet's almost gone. If we don't act soon, there won't be anyone left to help. Cale nodded grimly. Let's see if they're still willing to talk. He activated the comm system and broadcast a message on an open frequency. This is Captain Cal Draven of the human vessel Eclipse. We've received your distress signal and are here to assist. Respond if you can hear us. For a moment, there was only static. Then, a crackling voice replied, tinged with disbelief. You're humans. Is this some kind of trick? It's no trick, Cale said firmly. We're real, and we're ready to fight. But first, we need to meet face to face. After a tense pause, the Lumina commander responded. Understood. Transmit your coordinates. We'll send an escort. Minutes later, a small Lumina shuttle approached the Eclipse, its golden hull shimmering like liquid sunlight. The crew watched anxiously as it docked, unsure what to expect. When the airlock opened, Commander Vela stepped through, flanked by 2 armored guards. Her presence commanded respect, tall and elegant, with luminous skin that seemed to glow softly in the dim lighting. Yet her piercing gaze betrayed exhaustion and suspicion. "You're really human," she said, studying Cal intently. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "We're full of surprises," Cal replied with a wry smile, extending a hand. After a brief hesitation, Vela shook it, her grip firm but cautious. "Now, let's talk strategy. How do we turn this around?" Vela led them to the briefing room, where holographic displays showed the dire state of the battle. The Zentari had established supply hubs throughout the system, feeding resources to their endless swarm of ships. Without those hubs, their advance would slow significantly, but reaching them wouldn't be easy. "I have an idea," Kale said after studying the maps. "We hit one of these hubs hard and fast. Sabotage it from the inside. If we time it right, we can cripple their logistics and buy you time to regroup." Vela frowned. "It's risky. Those hubs are heavily guarded." "That's why we're doing it," Kale shot back. "Your people aren't built for sneak attacks. They're fighters, not infiltrators. Let us handle this. Trust me." The room fell silent as Vela weighed the proposal. Finally, she nodded. "Very well, but I'm assigning someone to accompany you. Jarek. He knows the terrain better than anyone." Jarek entered moments later, his armor battered but his stance resolute. His expression softened slightly when he saw Cal's determined grin. "Looks like we're stuck with each other," Jarek said dryly. "Better than being dead," Cal quipped. As plans were finalized, tensions lingered. Many Luminous still doubted whether humanity could live up to its legends. But Kale didn't care about earning their trust. Not yet. All that mattered was proving they weren't just myths. As the team prepared for the mission, Kale glanced at his crew. Mira adjusted her toolkit. Arlen checked his weapons, and Zix-7 floated silently, calculating odds. For all their differences, they shared one goal: survival. "Ready?" Kale asked, his voice steady. "Ready," Mira replied, determination in her eyes. They boarded the shuttle bound for the asteroid field, leaving behind the fragile hope of the Lumina fleet. Ahead lay danger, and perhaps redemption. Humanity's return to the galactic stage was about to begin. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a jagged maze of rock and ice spinning chaotically in the void. The shuttle carrying Kale, Mira, Arlen, Zix-7, and Jarek weaved cautiously through the debris, its engines humming softly as they approached their target, a massive Zentari supply hub hidden deep within the cluster. From the outside, it looked like just another asteroid, but sensors revealed tunnels carved into its surface, swarming with insectoid drones. "This place is crawling with them," Jarek muttered, studying the readings on his wrist console. "If we're caught, we won't last long." Kale smirked, though his knuckles were white from gripping the controls. "Then let's not get caught." They landed in a shadowed crevice on the asteroid's surface, far enough from the main entrances to avoid detection. Disguised in stolen Zentari armor scavenged from earlier pirate encounters, the team moved carefully across the rocky terrain. Their boots crunched against loose gravel, each step echoing ominously in the silence. Mira adjusted her helmet nervously. "I still can't believe this plan involves walking straight into a hive of literal bugs." "Focus," Arlen said sharply, scanning their surroundings. His voice was calm but firm, a reminder of why he'd been chosen for this mission. "One wrong move, and we're dead." Inside the tunnel system, the air grew thick and humid, buzzing faintly with the sound of countless wings flapping. The walls glistened with some kind of organic resin, pulsating faintly like veins. It felt alive, like the entire structure was part of the Zentari Queen's vast body. Kale suppressed a shudder as he led the group deeper, following Jarek's guidance through the labyrinthine passages. "So much for stealth," Mira whispered, pointing to a group of Zentari workers scuttling past. The creatures were humanoid in shape, but covered in chitinous exoskeletons, their multifaceted eyes gleaming eerily in the dim light. Thankfully, the disguises held. For now. Zix-7 floated silently beside them, its glowing core dimmed to avoid drawing attention. Probability of discovery increases exponentially with every meter traveled, it announced quietly. Recommend proceeding directly to objective. Their objective lay at the heart of the hub, a central reactor powering the facility. If they could overload it, the entire base would collapse, cutting off critical supplies to the Zentari fleet. But reaching it wouldn't be easy. As they rounded a corner, they froze. A patrol of heavily armed Zentari soldiers blocked their path. Kale raised a hand, signaling the team to stop. "We need a distraction," he whispered. Without hesitation, Mira pulled out a small device from her belt and tossed it down a side tunnel. A loud hissing noise erupted, followed by sparks and smoke. The patrol turned toward the commotion, giving the team a narrow window to slip past unnoticed. Deeper inside, the corridors narrowed, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees. The humidity became suffocating, and the buzzing grew louder, almost deafening. Then they saw it, the reactor core, a pulsating orb of green energy suspended in a web-like chamber. Guards patrolled nearby, their movements synchronized and mechanical. "We'll never disable that thing without taking out the guards first," Arlen said grimly. Kale nodded. "Leave that to me." He unholstered a compact EMP grenade, priming it carefully. "Cover me." With practiced precision, he rolled the grenade into the chamber. The burst of electromagnetic energy surged outward, disabling the guards' weapons and sending them scrambling. Seizing the moment, Mira dashed forward, attaching a series of explosive charges to the reactor while Zix-7 interfaced with its control panel. "Hurry," Jarek urged, keeping watch at the entrance. More Zentari reinforcements were closing in, their angry clicks echoing through the tunnels. "I'm done," Mira shouted, sprinting back to the group. Together, they retreated as fast as they could, explosions erupting behind them. The ground shook violently as the reactor destabilized, collapsing the tunnels and sealing off the hive. Back aboard the shuttle, Kale exhaled deeply, leaning back in his seat. "Mission accomplished," he said, grinning despite the chaos. But the victory was short-lived. As they emerged from the asteroid field, alarms blared across the battlefield. The Zentari fleet had already begun mobilizing reinforcements. Humanity's return had bought time. But the war was far from over. The sabotage of the Zentari supply hub sent shockwaves through the battlefield. News of the humans' daring raid spread quickly among the Lumina fleet, igniting a spark of hope that had long been extinguished. For the first time in months, the Luminous began to push back against the Zentari forces with renewed vigor. Morale soared as their enemies faltered, deprived of vital resources and reinforcements. But aboard the Eclipse, the mood was far from celebratory. The crew gathered in the ship's cramped briefing room, exhaustion etched on their faces. Kale leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his usual bravado replaced by a simmering tension. Mira sat at the table, tinkering absently with a damaged piece of equipment, while Arlen paced back and forth, his expression unreadable but clearly troubled. Even Zix-7's glowing core dimmed slightly, its calculations pausing as if sensing the weight of the moment. Commander Vela joined them via hologram, her luminous form flickering faintly in the dim light. "Your actions have turned the tide temporarily," she said, her voice calm but tinged with urgency. "But the Zentari will regroup soon. We need to strike at their heart, their homeworld." Kale frowned. "Their homeworld? That's suicide. It's the most fortified planet in the galaxy." "It's also our only chance," Jarek interjected, stepping forward. His tone was uncharacteristically sharp, betraying frustration. "If we destroy the Queen, we sever the hive-mind connection that keeps the Empire functioning. Without her, the Zentari collapse into chaos." Mira looked up, her brow furrowed. "And how exactly are we supposed to get past their defenses?" Last I checked, we're not invincible. Arlen stopped pacing and turned to face the group. He's right. Risky or not, it's the only way to end this war. But we'll need more than just guts. We'll need precision, timing, and every trick humanity has left. The room fell silent as the reality of the plan sank in. Attacking the Zentari homeworld meant infiltrating layers of defense systems, facing overwhelming numbers, and confronting horrors none of them could fully anticipate. It wasn't just dangerous, it was borderline impossible. Kale broke the silence, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. If anyone can pull this off, it's us. But we're not doing it alone. He glanced at Vela. We'll need everything you've got. Ships, intel, anything that gives us an edge. Vela hesitated, then nodded. You'll have it. But know this. Many in my council still doubt your intentions. If you fail, they may see you as a liability rather than allies. Then we don't fail, Kale shot back firmly. Turning to his crew, he added, what do you say? Ready to take on one last crazy mission? Mira sighed, setting down her tools. I didn't sign up for this much insanity, but fine. Let's do it. Arlen gave a curt nod. If there's even a sliver of hope, it's worth the risk. Zix-7 chimed in, its mechanical voice calm and logical. Probability of success remains low. However, calculated risks are inherent to achieving improbable outcomes. Jarek smirked faintly. Sounds like we're all in agreement then. As plans were laid out, tensions lingered beneath the surface. Each member of the team wrestled with doubts about themselves, about each other, and about humanity's place in the galaxy. Kale, however, refused to let uncertainty cloud his resolve. He knew what was at stake, not just victory, but the chance to prove that humanity still mattered. We've faced worse odds before, Kale said finally, his voice carrying a quiet determination. This is who we are. This is what we do. With preparations underway, the crew steeled themselves for the fight of their lives. The Zentari homeworld loomed ahead, a fortress of nightmares. But somewhere deep inside, they held on to the belief that even the smallest spark could ignite change. Humanity's legacy depended on it. The journey to the Zentari homeworld was fraught with tension. The Eclipse moved silently through hyperspace, its sleek form cutting through the swirling colors of the void. Inside, the air felt heavier than ever. Each member of the crew wrestled with their own doubts and fears, unsure if they were ready for what lay ahead. Kale stood alone in the cockpit, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. His hands gripped the controls tightly. Though the ship was on autopilot, he replayed the plan over and over in his mind. Every detail, every possible outcome. But no matter how many times he ran through it, one truth remained glaringly clear. This mission could cost them everything. Yet, as much as the weight of leadership pressed down on him, he couldn't shake the fire burning in his chest. This wasn't just about survival. It was about proving humanity's worth. Behind him, Arlen leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. His sharp eyes studied Cal carefully before speaking. You're going to get us killed. Kale didn't turn around. Probably, he admitted without hesitation. But sitting back while others fight isn't who we are. You know that. Arlen stepped closer, his voice low but firm. I'm not questioning your courage, Kale. I'm questioning your judgment. We've pushed ourselves to the limit already. If we fail here, he trailed off, letting the unspoken consequences hang in the air. We won't fail, Kale interrupted, finally turning to face him. Not because we're perfect, but because we don't have a choice. The galaxy is watching, Arlen. Humanity's comeback starts now, or it ends forever. Before Arlen could respond, Mira entered the cockpit, her expression conflicted. She held up a small device she'd been working on, a modified EMP pulse designed to disrupt the Zentari hive mind temporarily. It's ready, she said quietly, but I can't guarantee it'll work long enough for us to reach the Queen. It has to, Kale replied, his tone leaving no room for doubt. We've got one shot at this. We make it count. Zix-7 floated into the room, its glowing core pulsing softly. Probability of success remains below 40%. However, based on available data, the proposed strategy offers the highest likelihood of achieving the desired outcome. Comforting, Mira muttered under her breath, earning a rare chuckle from Arlen. Jarek joined them moments later, his armor freshly repaired after the last mission. Despite his stoic demeanor, there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. "If we're doing this," he said, addressing the group, "we need to be honest about the risks. The homeworld isn't just fortified, it's alive. Every step inside will feel like walking into the belly of a beast." Kale nodded grimly. "Then we stick together. No heroics, no splitting off. We win or lose as a team." As the ship exited hyperspace, the Centauri homeworld loomed ahead, a monstrous orb shrouded in thick clouds of bioengineered haze. Towering spires jutted out from its surface, pulsating faintly with green light. Swarms of drones patrolled the skies, and massive warships orbited the planet like sentinels guarding their queen. Mira swallowed hard. "This is insane." "Yeah," Kale agreed, cracking a wry smile. "But insanity's kind of our thing." With a deep breath, he activated the comm system, patching through to Commander Vela aboard the Lumina flagship. "We're here," he said simply. "Ready when you are." Vela's holographic form appeared, her luminous skin glowing faintly. "The diversion fleet is in position. They'll draw the enemy's attention while you infiltrate. Good luck, Captain Draven. The galaxy depends on you." As the transmission ended, Kale turned to his crew. Their faces were tense but resolute. For all their differences, they shared one goal: survival, not just for themselves, but for everyone counting on them. "Let's finish this," Kale said, his voice steady. Together, they prepared for the final assault, knowing full well that failure meant annihilation. But even as fear gnawed at the edges of their resolve, they clung to hope, the stubborn belief that humanity's return would mean something more than just another chapter in galactic history. The eclipse descended toward the planet, slipping past waves of Centauri fighters. Explosions lit up the sky as the divergent fleet engaged the enemy above. Below, the hive awaited, teeming with horrors beyond imagination. And somewhere within, the Queen pulsed with power, unaware that her reign was about to be challenged by Earth's forgotten warriors. The descent into the Centauri homeworld was chaos incarnate. The eclipse tore through layers of bioengineered defenses, dodging swarms of insectoid drones and bursts of plasma fire from orbital cannons. Cal's hands danced over the controls with practiced precision, weaving the ship through a storm of explosions that lit up the atmosphere like fireworks gone wrong. Each jolt shook the crew inside, but no one flinched. This was their moment, their chance to prove humanity's resilience. "We're almost through," Mira shouted, her voice barely audible over the roar of alarms and the ship's groaning frame. She monitored the sensors closely, watching as the outer defenses thinned just enough for them to slip past. "Hold steady." Arlen gripped his seat tightly, gritting his teeth as another blast rocked the ship. "If we don't make it down in one piece, none of this matters," he growled, glancing at Kale. Kale smirked despite the danger. "Relax, Arlen. I've got this." They broke through the final layer of resistance, emerging into the planet's toxic skies. Below stretched an alien landscape straight out of a nightmare. Twisted forests of pulsating organic towers, rivers of glowing green sludge, and endless hordes of Centauri warriors patrolling every inch of ground. It felt alive, like the entire planet was a single organism under the Queen's control. "Touchdown in 3, Kale announced, guiding the ship toward a shadowy crevice near the base of a massive spire. He landed hard, the impact jarring everyone aboard. "Gear up. We're on foot from here." The team moved quickly, stepping out into the humid, oppressive air. Their stolen Centauri armor still held up under scrutiny, though sweat dripped down their faces beneath their helmets. Jarek led the way, his movements sharp and deliberate. "Stay close," he warned. "One wrong move, and they'll tear us apart." The tunnels leading deeper into the hive were narrow and slick, with some kind of viscous fluid that clung to their boots. The walls pulsed faintly, emitting low-frequency vibrations that made it hard to think clearly. Every step echoed loudly, amplifying the sound of their breathing. The buzzing grew louder as they advanced, accompanied by the skittering of countless legs in the distance. "This place is crawling with them," Mira whispered, clutching her toolkit tightly. "How are we supposed to sneak past all of this?" "We improvise," Kel replied, his tone calm but firm. He pulled out a small device, a prototype smoke grenade laced with electromagnetic interference, and tossed it ahead. A thick cloud billowed out, disorienting nearby drones and giving the team precious seconds to slip past unnoticed. As they reached the central chamber, the scale of the hive became overwhelming. Towering structures loomed above them, connected by webs of resin-like material that glowed faintly in the dim light. In the center stood the queen, an enormous, grotesque creature with chitinous armor and writhing appendages. Her multifaceted eyes scanned the room constantly, as if sensing intruders even before they arrived. "She's bigger than I thought," Arlen muttered, raising his weapon cautiously. Zix-7 floated forward, analyzing the situation. "Direct confrontation will result in failure. Recommend disabling auxiliary systems first to weaken hive connectivity." Jarek nodded. "I'll draw her attention while you set up the EMP pulse." "No," Kale said sharply. "We stick together. That's the plan." Before anyone could argue, alarms blared throughout the chamber. The queen let out a deafening screech, and waves of drones surged toward them. The battle had begun. "Time to show these bugs what humans are made of," Kale yelled, charging forward with reckless determination. Weapons fired, explosions erupted, and chaos consumed the chamber. Humanity's fight for survival had reached its climax, and failure was not an option. The chamber erupted into chaos as Kale and his team fought desperately to hold their ground. The Zentari Queen loomed above them, her massive form casting an ominous shadow over the battlefield. Her chitinous exoskeleton gleamed menacingly under the pulsating green light of the hive, and her writhing appendages lashed out with terrifying speed. Every movement she made sent shockwaves through the air, forcing the humans to brace themselves against the sheer force of her presence. "Focus on the drones," Kale shouted, firing his weapon in short, controlled bursts. His aim was precise, taking down one insectoid warrior after another. But for every drone that fell, two more seemed to take its place. The swarm closed in around them, relentless and unyielding. Mira crouched behind a jagged pillar, hastily assembling the EMP pulse device, while explosions rocked the chamber. Her hands trembled slightly, but her focus never wavered. "Almost ready," she called out, her voice strained but determined. Arlen stood back to back with Kale, his weapon spitting energy bolts at the advancing horde. Sweat dripped down his face beneath his helmet, but he refused to give an inch. "They're too many," he yelled, gritting his teeth. "We can't keep this up forever." Jarek darted forward, drawing the attention of several drones toward him. With swift, calculated strikes, he cut through their ranks, leaving a trail of shattered bodies in his wake. Despite his skill, even he couldn't evade every attack. A claw grazed his arm, tearing through his armor. He grunted in pain but kept moving, knowing there was no time to stop. Zix-7 floated calmly amidst the carnage, deploying countermeasures to disable nearby enemies. Its glowing core pulsed rhythmically as it analyzed the Queen's movements. "Primary target is vulnerable during energy surges," it announced. "Timing is critical." Kale nodded sharply, understanding the plan immediately. "Mira, how much longer?" She glanced up from her work, panic flickering in her eyes. 30 seconds, maybe less." The Queen let out another deafening screech, her multifaceted eyes locking onto Kale. She raised one of her massive limbs, slamming it down toward him with devastating force. Kale barely rolled out of the way in time, the impact shaking the ground violently. Dust and debris filled the air, making it harder to see. "We need a distraction," Arlen barked, firing wildly to cover Mira as she worked. "I've got it," Jarek replied, grabbing a grenade from his belt. He hurled it at the base of one of the resin-covered towers, causing it to collapse and send chunks of organic material raining down on the swarm. The sudden disruption gave the team a brief reprieve, but not enough. "Done," Mira cried, holding up the completed EMP pulse device. "Get me close enough, and I'll plant it." Kale didn't hesitate. Grabbing Mira's arm, he sprinted toward the Queen, dodging claws and blasts of bioenergy along the way. The others followed closely, laying down cover fire to keep the drones at bay. When they reached the edge of the Queen's platform, Kale launched himself upward, pulling Mira with him. They landed hard on the slick surface, skidding to a stop just feet away from the monstrous creature. "Now," Kale shouted. Mira activated the device, plunging it into the pulsating flesh of the hive's central node. The Queen roared in fury, thrashing violently as the EMP began to disrupt her connection to the hive mind. Lights flickered across the chamber, and the drones froze mid-motion, their coordination collapsing without her control. But the Queen wasn't finished yet. Summoning the last reserves of her strength, she lunged at Mira, her massive jaws snapping shut mere inches away. Kale tackled her out of the way, rolling them both clear just as Zik-7 self-destructed its core, releasing a final surge of energy that overloaded the system. The Queen let out one last, ear-splitting scream before collapsing, her body convulsing as the hive dissolved into chaos. The remaining drones scattered aimlessly, leaderless and disoriented. Breathing heavily, Kale helped Mira to her feet. Around them, the chamber crumbled, signaling the end of the Zentari Empire. Humanity had struck its greatest blow yet, and the galaxy would never forget it. The chamber was collapsing around them, the hive's organic structure deteriorating without the Queen to maintain its cohesion. The air grew thick with smoke, and the acrid stench of decay as walls cracked and towers toppled. Kale grabbed Mira's arm, pulling her toward the exit. "Move," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Arlen and Jarek were already sprinting ahead, their weapons drawn but useless now against the crumbling environment. Behind them, the massive form of the fallen Queen twitched one last time before going still, her glowing eyes dimming into darkness. It was over. The Zentari Empire had been brought to its knees by a handful of humans who refused to back down. "We're not out yet," Arlen barked, glancing over his shoulder at the others. His face was streaked with dirt and sweat, but his determination burned brighter than ever. Zik-7's sacrifice weighed heavily on everyone, especially Mira. She clenched her fists as they ran, tears streaming down her face beneath her helmet. "We couldn't have done it without you," she whispered, knowing the AI wouldn't hear her, but finding solace in saying it anyway. They burst out of the hive into the open air, greeted by the sight of the Lumina fleet raining fire upon the remaining Zentari forces above. The diversion fleet had held its ground long enough for the humans to complete their mission, and now the tide of battle had turned decisively in favor of the Luminous. Enemy ships drifted lifelessly in space, their crews either dead or surrendering en masse. Kale paused for a moment, watching the scene unfold. For the first time since this journey began, he allowed himself to feel a flicker of pride, not just in himself, but in humanity as a whole. They had risen to the occasion when no one else could, proving that even a forgotten species could change the course of history. Commander Vela's voice crackled over the comms. "Draven, do you copy? Status report." "We're alive," Kale replied, his tone lighter than usual. "Mission accomplished. The Queen is down." There was a pause on the other end before Vela responded, her voice trembling with relief, and something close to awe. "You've done it. You've saved us all." As the team reached the eclipse, battered but victorious, they boarded quickly and prepared for liftoff. The ground beneath them quaked violently as the hive imploded, sending shockwaves rippling across the landscape. Kale piloted the ship upward with practiced ease, leaving the dying world behind. Back aboard the Lumina flagship, celebrations erupted among the crew. Commander Vela personally thanked each member of the human team, her luminous skin glowing brighter with gratitude. "You've reminded the galaxy what it means to fight for hope," she said, bowing deeply. "Humanity will never be forgotten again." Kale accepted the praise humbly, though he knew the real heroes were the ones who had stood beside him every step of the way. As the eclipse departed for Earth, he gazed out at the stars, reflecting on everything they'd been through. Humanity wasn't perfect. They were reckless, flawed, and stubborn, but those imperfections made them strong. On Earth, news of their victory spread like wildfire. People gathered in cities and villages, looking up at the night sky with renewed wonder. Children dreamed of exploring distant worlds, while elders spoke of reviving humanity's legacy among the stars. Somewhere deep in space, another beacon of distress flickered to life, a reminder that there would always be battles to fight, challenges to overcome. But for now, humanity could rest knowing they had reclaimed their place in the galaxy. And Cal Draven smiled, ready for whatever came next.